Good? Asked Lizzie finally. Better than good, said Turner. You don't look so bad when you smile, you know, even if you are still sort of bloody and your nose is pushed off to one side. It isn't pushed off to one side, and you don't look so bad when you swing. You start with your hands low, don't you? And then when the pitch comes down, you set them lower and draw in. She nodded. You're not an idiot after all, not even halfway. She handed the branch to Turner. Now you. She was, in addition to being a better batter than he was, a better pitcher than he was. Start lower and come higher, she said. If I start lower and come higher, I'll pop it up every time. Of course you'll pop it up every time. We'll straighten that out later. Turner lowered the branch and looked at her skeptically. Here, she said, I'll show you again. And she stepped next to him and put her hands over his, and together they swung the bat in an arc as graceful as a fishhawk swinging slide through the air. They did it again and again until Turner suddenly shivered, stepped back, and looked at her. You never touch a girl before, Turner, Ernest Buckminster? Or is it just that you never touched a girl with black skin before? I've never even talked to someone with black skin before. Well, she said, never mind, you're holding up your end just fine. By noon, Turner could hit most every pitch she threw to him, and not just a glancing hit either. He was starting to level out his swing, and he even tried sending one or two down a sideline. His hands were ringing with the hits, and blisters were starting to bubble up. It was only when a couple of them broke and started to bleed that he thought he'd better stop, since he was not sure how much blood he had left to lose. You can wash that in the water, Lizzie said. I know, said Turner. Salt water will do for everything. He knelt down to where the sea lay flat and exhausted after tumbling in close. It'll sting some, Lizzie called as he held his hand down. Maybe a little more than some. It did sting, a little more than some, but Turner did not mind all that much. He held his wet hand up and watched the salt sea drip from it. My granddaddy says it's the stinging that drives out the hurt. Your granddaddy? Turner asked. Reverend Griffin. And that was when Turner suddenly knew that he was late for dinner, that Reverend Buckminster would be figuring that he'd fallen into some rocky chasm, or drowned in the sea, or worse yet, that he'd come up with some other way to embarrass the new minister. And he figured that when he showed up alive after all, his father would stand on the porch and look at him in a way that said Turner would never be the kind of son he had hoped for. It would be as loud as if he had just announced it from the pulpit. Lizzie Bright Griffin, do you ever wish the whole world would just go ahead and swallow you whole? Sometimes I do, she said, and then smiled. But sometimes I figure I should just go ahead and swallow it. And she held her arms out wide as if she would gather it all in, and for a moment Turner had no doubt that she could.